Okay, so before I get started, I am going to check the audio. Today, I'm just going to go ahead and check the audio with YouTube from Rumble Studio. And uh, even though I don't have to, because I just heard myself on D Live, so that was good. But still, I have to go into YouTube and set up the video to where it's actually in the playlist that it needs to go to. Um, so let me go in and take care of that so that I don't have to worry about it after the stream is all said and done. Um, this is the Cosmic Weave, and I do believe I have a playlist for it. I just have to figure out where it is. Well, now I'm kind of stumped. Wow, I can't find it. It's just a live stream, anyhow, I believe. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, actually, I don't think I've actually made these into uploads yet. So, got it on live stream for the playlist if anybody wants to check it out. Today, I've actually got a little bit of organization, and I have everything ready and set up to go on this one. Now, I am going to do my countdown and then do an introduction like I normally do. I do that usually for editing purposes so that it's easier for me to know when to actually cut the video and where the beginning of the video is when I do the edits. So here we go. Let me go ahead and get that started. Actually, I need to go into Rumble too to make sure this actually is working. I, I always mess myself up by not doing that. Make sure that it's actually being viewed on there. Okay, yeah, I can hear myself, so I'm good with all that now. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cosmic Weave here on the wonderful world of weirdness. I'm Roger Hanson, and I'll be your host tonight. Now, I left off the last time doing probably the same thing over again that I did the stream before that. And if I did, I apologize. I haven't had time to really go back and check it. But I am ready and prepared today to move further on in the topic. I apologize to anybody who um, has been watching and noticed that the streams have been getting within the hour range. The reason for that is that my schedule has been really messing up on me real bad, and getting these things put together and done upright has been a task for me because I have to worry about the streams that I got to be on, do edits, as well as my gaming channel that I've been working on trying to get back up and going the way it used to be. Um, it's all been a chore for me, and everything that pertains to my writing seems to have fallen down into the gutters again, as it seems. I have an issue with that when it comes to my other channel, The Storyteller, as well. I've been wanting to get into writing more, and the more I try, the harder it gets for me because other things creep up. So With that being said, like I said, I apologize about that. And today, I actually pulled some stuff up that pertains to the cosmic weave, and I want to go further with it. So, with that being said, let me go ahead and get on with the reading. So, here we go. Now, humans can adapt to unexpected situations by relying on prior experiences. Now, with AGI, um, that they would need to demonstrate like a similar ability by reasoning through new problems without needing additional training. Now, AGI is a part of artificial intelligence. Um, it has to do with um, the whole structure of how AI works. Now, earlier I've been talking about waves and like gamma waves and alpha waves and things of that nature. After that, I started talking about alpha and theta like waves, which are in the real world. Since I've only got a few episodes or for this season left, I have to kind of escalate this and make it go a little bit farther. And this is where I start talking about artificial intelligence, AGI, audio, and things of that nature. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to start talking about audio in my last episode, because it's a lot more important than what people think it is. So, with that, I'll continue. Now, AGI would need to demonstrate a similar ability by reasoning through new problems without needing additional training. Okay, that's to maintain posture. Okay, okay. Well, humans, like I said, can adapt. Okay, now to unexpected situations, and they do that by like maintaining posture, muscle contraction, forces, motor skills, things of that nature. Constant communication is needed between the cerebellum and the thalamus when that takes place. Okay. Now, on the human side, uh, with neuroplasticity, the brain can reorganize itself. Okay. Now, this is where we start talking about neuroplasticity. And like I said, humans have this ability to adapt to unexpected situations. And the way they do it is they rely on prior experiences. Artificial intelligence, particularly AGI, is working on doing that same concept, trying to come up with the a way that artificial intelligence can do the same thing. Now we do that. We do these things, like I said, to maintain posture. Adjust muscle contraction, things of that nature, and also for like motor skills to execute them and stuff of that nature. Now, again, let me go back and say it again. Constant communication is needed between the cerebellum and the thalamus, and that's what I've been focusing on mostly is the thalamus. I don't get too much into the cerebellum, but that is uh, important too, because there has to be constant communication between the two, the thalamus and the cerebellum. Now, this is where neuroplasticity comes into play. Through neuroplasticity, the brain can actually reorganize itself by forming new neural connections uh, within the thalamic circuits. Now, the genetic underpinnings of thalamic uh, development and function, the thalamocortical loop, and the dynamic interplay between the thalamus and the cerebral cortex are essential for memory, attention, and decision making. Now, the thalamus is a hub for communication, integration, and coordination, playing a vital role in nearly every aspect of brain function, from motor control and sensory processing to consciousness and emotional regulation. Now, it's connected to other parts of the brain, particularly the cerebellum. Uh, it helps maintain a delicate balance of smooth and coordinated movement and things of that nature. Now, unique insights into the brain function and plasticity have revealed that personality and cognitive changes can occur due to damage to different brain regions. Unexpected cognitive recoveries have been observed due to the brain's ability to reroute functions over time. This goes back to neuroplasticity. Okay. Now, neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. This allows the brain to adapt in response to experience, learning, injury, or changes in the environment. When we learn something new or practice a skill, the synapses between neurons can become stronger or weaker, and even new neuron pathways can be formed. This is the physical basis for learning and memory in biological systems. Reinforcement learning models this kind of adaptive behavior in simplified computational form. Just as the brain forces successful actions through positive feedback like pleasure, success, or reward, a reinforcement learning agent adjusts its future actions based on whether the outcomes were good or bad. The core feedback mechanism, reward and punishment, mirrors how dopamine-based learning works in biological brains, particularly in areas like the basal ganglia, which plays a key role in habit formation and decision making. Some of the algorithms used in reinforcement learning, such as those involving value functions and reward prediction errors, are inspired by how neuroscientists believe certain brain regions operate during learning. For example, studies suggest that dopaminergic neurons in the brain compute a form of predictive error, which is very similar to the error signals used in reinforcement learning to adjust future behavior. In neural networks, especially when used with reinforcement learning, there's also an analogy to synaptic plasticity. The weights between nodes change over time as the system receives feedback, just as synaptic strengths change in the brain. Though artificial networks are far simpler than biological ones, the mechanisms for adjusting and learning share a conceptual foundation with neuroplasticity. There are several specific parallels between reinforcement learning in artificial intelligence and neuroplasticity in biological brains. Although they operate in very different systems, one being a computational model and the other a biological process, their methods of learning, adaptation, and behavioral modification show meaningful similarities. Both depend on experience to influence future behavior. In reinforcement learning, an agent takes an action and receives a reward or penalty based on the outcome. This reward guides future decisions. In the human brain, outcomes also reinforce behavior. Positive experiences or successful actions strengthen certain neural connections, while negative ones weaken them. This is the essence of neuroplasticity, which allows the brain to adapt by reshaping its neural pathways based on experience. A strong conceptual link between the two is the idea of reward prediction error. In reinforcement learning, when an outcome is better or worse than expected, the internal value of the action is updated to reflect this surprise. Likewise, in neuroscience, dopamine-produced neurons respond not just to rewards, but to the difference between expected and actual outcomes. When a reward is better than expected, these neurons fire more. When worse, they reduce activity. This biological reward signals help. This biological reward signal helps fine-tune behavior in much the same way as computational learning signals. The changes that occur in artificial neural networks during learning resembles how the brain adjusts through synaptic plasticity. In computational models, the strength of connections between nodes, known as weights, are gradually adjusted to reduce errors in prediction or action. In the brain, similar adjustments happen at the synaptic level. Long-term potentiation and long-term depression are processes that strengthen or weaken synapses based on how often they are activated, mirroring how artificial systems update weights through repeated exposure to stimuli and feedback. Another parallel is the need to balance exploration and exploitation. Both artificial and biological systems must decide when to try something new and when to rely on what is already known to work. In artificial systems, this balance is often programmed through specific strategies or algorithms. In the brain, dopamine and other neurochemicals influence this balance, guiding whether to persist with a known behavior or seek alternatives. Over time, both systems can form habits. In reinforcement learning, as an agent repeats actions that lead to rewards, those actions become more likely and are repeated more often. In the brain, behaviors that lead to repeated positive outcomes are reinforced through circuits involving areas such as the basal ganglia. These behaviors can eventually become automatic, requiring less conscious thought or effort. Both systems also rely on interpreting current situations to inform decisions. In artificial learning, this involves representing the state of the environment with specific variables. In the brain, sensory information and contextual cues are processed to form an internal representation of a situation. The more accurately this state is interpreted, the better the decision-making process. Learning from delayed outcomes is another shared trait. Artificial systems use methods that help them connect actions with results that may occur much later. This mirrors how humans learn to associate early decisions with distant outcomes, such as studying now to succeed later. The brain has mechanisms that support this kind of long-term association, which is crucial for goal-directed behavior. Finally, both artificial and natural systems work together. No, both artificial and natural systems work towards achieving goals. In reinforcement learning, the objective is to maximize the total accumulated reward. In human behavior, goal-oriented actions are shaped by experiences, emotions, and planning, involving brain regions like the prefrontal cortex. While artificial systems lack emotions or self-awareness, the framework guiding their behavior based on goal pursuit and feedback is conceptually similar to how humans learn and adapt. Although the complexity of the human brain far exceeds any current artificial system, the foundational principle of trial, feedback, adjustment, and learning over time are deeply shared. Many aspects of reinforcement learning were inspired by observations on how the brain works, particularly in areas of decision making and adaptation. There are similarities between transfer learning in artificial intelligence and neuroplasticity in the human brain. Both processes revolve around the idea that knowledge or patterns learned in one context can be applied to another. This ability to generalize and adapt past learning to new situations is central to intelligent behavior, whether it's biological or artificial. In transfer learning, a model is first trained on a large dataset for one task, such as identifying everyday objects. Once it has learned to recognize general patterns like shapes, edges, or textures, the same model can then be adapted to a different but related task, like identifying medical images or types of vehicles, with much less data and training time. The foundational knowledge gained from the first task helps the model perform well in the new context without needing to learn everything from scratch. This concept parallels neuroplasticity in several ways. In the brain, when a person learns a new skill or forms a new memory, the underlying neural pathways adjust and strengthen. Over time, this new structure supports the application of that knowledge to other areas. For example, learning a musical instrument not only trains auditory and motor systems, but can also improve general cognitive functions like memory and spatial reasoning. The brain uses previously established neural structures to build and support new ones. This adaptability shows how past learning facilitates future learning in different domains. Another example can be seen in language. A person who knows one Romance language like Spanish often finds it easier to learn another, such as Italian or French. The neural circuitry formed while learning the first language supports the accelerates learning of the second because the brain can reuse previously developed structures, rules, and vocabulary patterns. This is conceptually similar to how a machine learning model, once trained on a broad task, can adapt more easily to a specialized but related one. Both transfer learning and neuroplasticity rely on the efficient use of prior knowledge. In artificial systems, this leads to faster training, better performance, and a reduced need for large amounts of data. In the brain, it allows for learning through analogy, pattern recognition, and flexible problem solving. Generative, generative models in artificial intelligence relate to neuroplasticity in meaningful conceptual ways, although they arise in different domains, one in computational modeling and the other in biological brain function. At their core, both processes involve the brain or a machine generating patterns, representations, or expectations based on past experience, and both can adapt those representations over time in response to new inputs or environments. Generative models are systems that learn the underlying structure of data in order to produce new data that resembles the original. These models do not just clarify or label input, but instead learn how to recreate it, simulate variations of it, or predict how it might behave. Examples include systems that can generate realistic human faces, compose music, write text, or simulate sensory environments. These capabilities are based on the model's internal representation of patterns, correlations, and relationships that it has learned from training data. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to physically and functionally reorganize itself in response to learning, experience, or injury. It changes the strength and arrangement of synaptic connections, allowing the brain to adapt, create new skills, and even recover lost functions. This reorganization depends on generating and updating internal models of the world, what objects are, how events unfold, how languages work, how to plan actions, and more. The key point to connection is that both generative models and neuroplasticity depend on internal representations that are flexible and modifiable. In the brain, these representations are formed by networks of neurons that adjust their connections through experience. For example, when a person imagines a familiar face or anticipates the sound of a word before it's spoken, the brain is essentially generating expected sensory input from stored memory patterns. much like how a generative model might construct an image or sequence. Generative modeling can also be linked to how the brain makes predictions. One popular theory in neuroscience, predictive coding, suggests that the brain is constantly generating predictions about incoming sensory data and updating its models based on the error between expected and actual inputs. This ongoing refinement process is driven by neuroplasticity. When the prediction error is high, synaptic changes occur to correct the internal model, bringing it closer to reality. Similarly, generative models are trained to minimize the difference between their output and the actual data, adjusting internal weights or latent variables to reduce this gap. Another area of similarity is imagination and simulation. The brain is capable of mentally simulating experiences, actions, or outcomes before they happen. This generative capacity, envisioning a future event, hearing an internal voice, or picturing a concept, relies on networks that have been shaped by past experiences through plasticity. In generative artificial systems, the ability to process novel outputs is likewise dependent on prior learning and internal structure. Expectation maximization, a statistical method used in artificial intelligence and machine learning, resembles neuroplasticity in that both involve iterative refinement based on incomplete or uncertain information, learning to improve, no, learning to leading to improved understanding or function over time. Through expectation maximization, or though expectation maximization is a mathematical algorithm and neuroplasticity is a biological process, both share a core principle: adaptively updating internal structures or beliefs in response to feedback from data or experience. Expectation maximization is used to estimate hidden variables or missing data in complex models. It works by alternating between two steps: the expectation step, where the algorithm estimates the probability distribution of the hidden variable based on current parameters, and the maximization step, where it updates the parameters to maximize the likelihood of the observed data given those estimates. This process repeats until the model converges on a stable solution that best explains the data. Each cycle improves the model's ability to represent the underlying reality, even though the full truth is not directly observable. This process mirrors neuroplasticity in the brain. The brain continuously receives sensory input and uses it to update into internal models of the world. These models, encoded through networks of neurons and strengthened by synaptic connections, are rarely based on complete or perfect data. Instead, the brain makes predictions about the environment and refines its neural wiring based on whether those predictions match what actually happens. This is similar to the expectation step, where the brain forms a guess about the state of the world, and the maximization step, where it adjusts neural pathways based on the difference between expected and actual outcomes. Over time, just as expectation maximization leads to a more accurate statistical model through repeated refinement, neuroplasticity leads to more efficient, precise, and adaptive neural circuits. This occurs in learning a new language, mastering a new motor skill, or recovering after injury. When the brain interprets information or fails to anticipate an event correctly, it undergoes structural changes at the synaptic level to improve future performance, gradually maximizing its likelihood of correct behavior or perception. Another, another resemblance lies in dealing with ambiguity and expectation. In expectation maximization, the true values of the hidden variables are unknown and must be inferred. In the brain, many sensory signals are noisy, partial, or ambiguous, and the brain must infer what they mean. Through neuroplasticity, the brain refines its internal models to handle this ambiguity more effectively, just as expectation maximization refines its estimates to deal with missing or uncertain data. Both systems also rely heavily on iteration. One cycle of learning or updating does not complete the process. Instead, repeated exposures and refinements are essential. The expectation maximization, no, In expectation maximization, the model may initially be far from optimal, but after many cycles, it typically converges towards a better solution. Similarly, neuroplasticity allows the brain to gradually improve performance through repetition and feedback, as seen in how practice strengthens memory or skill. There are notable similarities between native language processing in the human brain and neuroplasticity. These two phenomena are deeply interconnected, and understanding one often sheds light on the other. Native language processing refers to the brain's ability to acquire, interpret, produce, and refine language from early childhood onwards. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to reorganize its structure, function, and connections in response to learning, experience, or injury. Together, they form the basis of how language is learned and used effectively. The most direct similarities is that native language processing fundamentally depends on neuroplasticity. When a child is exposed to language, the brain begins forming and strengthening neural pathways that correspond to the sounds, rhythms, meanings, and grammatical structures of that language. This is particularly pronounced during what is often referred to as a critical period, usually early in life, when the brain is especially plastic and responsive to linguistic input. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to wire itself in ways that support the comprehension and production of language. Fine-tuning phonemic awareness, vocabulary usage, syntax, and even social context. Another key similarity lies in adaptation. Just as neuroplasticity allows the brain to change based on experience, native language processes involve constant refinement. A child doesn't simply memorize language, they build it into their cognitive framework by forming mental models of grammar, word associations, and meaning. As they hear more languages and gain feedback through conversation and interaction, the brain adjusts its internal representations. This is neuroplasticity in action, adapting circuits to better support efficient communication. Furthermore, the process of learning new vocabulary or shifting language registers, like speaking formally in one context and casually in another, also involves plastic changes. Neurons involved in memory, sound processing, and meaning association must reconfigure to accommodate and use the new input. Bilingual or multilingual individuals often show distinct patterns of cortical organization compared to monolinguals, demonstrating that the brain reshapes itself to handle multiple linguistic systems. This flexibility is a hallmark of neuroplasticity. Even more, recovery from language-related brain injuries injury shows the brain's plastic nature. Individuals who suffer strokes or trauma to language dom- dominant dominant areas can sometimes regain linguistic functions by recruiting new regions of the brain. This compensatory compensatory ability is made possible by the brain's plastic structure and its ability to redistribute tasks to undamaged areas. From a developmental perspective, native language processing also illustrates how neuroplasticity varies with age. Children can often learn languages more effortlessly and with more native-like pronunciation than adults. This is because their brains are still in a heightened state of plasticity, readily forming new connections. In contrast, adult learners can still acquire new languages, but often with more effort and a heavier reliance on different cognitive strategies, like conscious memorization rather than immersive absorption. And biological processes in the human brain that govern native language processing are conceptually and structurally influential. No, the biological processes in the human brain that govern native language processing are conceptually and structurally influential in the design of artificial intelligence systems that aim to process language, especially in the field of natural language processing. While the mechanism, or wait, while the mechanisms in machines differ in substance, they are based on mathematical models, algorithms, and symbolic computation. The inspiration and conceptual parallels often come from how the brain handles language through neuroplasticity, sensory integration, and layered processing. In the human brain, native language processing depends on dynamic neural activity and adaptation. From birth, the brain continuously absorbs language data, forming associations between sounds, meanings, and grammatical patterns. It does not require explicit instructions, but rather learns contextually through experience. This adaptability, enabled by neuroplasticity, allows the brain to refine its understanding of language, accommodate regional dialects, manage ambiguity, and use tone, rhythm, and body language cues for deeper comprehension. Artificial intelligence systems attempt to mirror these adaptive capabilities through learning algorithms that train on vast corpora of human language. Instead of neurons, these systems use artificial networks, layers of mathematical functions that adjust internal parameters based on exposure to data. In the same way the brain strengthens or weakens synaptic connections, these networks adjust the strength of connections between artificial nodes to reduce error and improve predictions. One specific connection between biology and artificial models lies in how both systems handle language patterns over time. The brain learns that certain words often appear together, or that the structure of a sentence guides its meaning. Similarly, artificial models, especially those based on sequences, learn dependencies across words or sentences. Early models mimicked short-term memory in the brain, using mechanisms to retain and forget data in a regulated fashion. More recent models use complex attention-based systems to simulate the way the brain might prioritize certain parts of input while downplaying others, reflecting how people listen more attentively to keywords or emotionally charged phrases. The biological brain is especially good at generalizing from limited data. A child can hear a handful of examples and infer grammatical rules or use newly learned words in novel combinations. Artificial systems strive to reproduce this through transfer learning, where a model trains on one language task can be applied to another with minimal retraining. Though machines often need much more data than a child would, new architectures are being designed to improve this efficiency, drawing from cognitive science and studies of human development. Another point of relation is ambiguity resolution. Human language is full of pol- polysemy, polysemy, sarcasm, implied meaning, and incomplete grammar. The human brain resolves this using context, experience, emotion, and intent. Artificial intelligence systems approximate this through contextual embedding, mathematical representations of words and phrases that shift depending on the surrounding content. These embeddings allow machines to grasp different meanings of the same word based on context, though not with the same intuition or depth as humans. Emotional intent and prosody are also processed naturally in the human brain, enabling fluid conversations and empathy. Artificial systems are beginning to incorporate affective computing, which attempts to detect emotional tone or user intention and respond appropriately. This is still a developing field, but it draws inspiration from neurological studies on how different areas of the brain handle social and emotional language. In terms of structure, human language processing is distributed across multiple regions of the brain, such as Broca's area for syntax and Wernicke's area for meaning. Artificial networks similarly divide tasks among layers, with some layers focusing on basic features, such as letters or word shapes, and other capturing high-ordered structures like topic, sentiment, or intent. Artificial intelligence attempts to replace the outcome of biological language processing, comprehension, conversation, translation, and creative expression, using a fundamentally different substrate, where the brain uses cells, chemistry, and sensory feedback. AI uses logic, probability, and large-scale computation. However, many of the goals and even the principles, like learning from experience, refining over time, recognizing structure in variability, and resolving ambiguity, are deeply rooted in our understanding of how the brain processes its native language. Analog sound waves relate to neuroplasticity in a fundamental and meaningful way, particularly in how the brain receives, interprets, and adapts to auditory stimuli throughout life. While analog sound waves themselves are physical vibrations in the air, neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to change its structure and function in response to experiences, including those driven by sound. The interactions between the two play a vital role in sensory development, language acquisition, musical training, and even recovery from hearing loss or brain injury. Analog sound waves are continuous variations in pressure that travel through air and are captured by the human ear. These vibrations are then transduced by the inner ear into electrical signals, which are transmitted via the auditory nerve to the brain. The brain interprets these signals as sound, whether it's speech, music, or ambient noise. From the moment a person is born, these analog inputs begin shaping neural circuits through pla- no, experience-dependent plasticity. During early development, frequently and varied exposure to natural sound waves helps establish auditory pathways. Babies exposed to language-rich environments develop more robust auditory maps and greater sensitivity to the phonemes of their native language. The auditory cortex becomes tuned to the specific features of those analog waves, including frequency, amplitude, and duration. Neuroplasticity enables this turning process, reinforcing connections that respond effectively to common patterns in the environment and pruning those that do not. In adults, neuroplasticity continues to be influenced by analog sound, especially in contexts such as learning a new language or playing a musical instrument. For example, musicians often develop enhanced auditory discrimination and stronger connections between auditory and motor areas of the brain. Their neural structures physically adapt to the demands of recognized pitch, rhythm, and tonal changes. This adaptability is directly related to the brain's response to the analog qualities of sound, such as waveform dynamics and harmonic structure. Moreover, analog sound plays a role in therapies designed to harness neuroplasticity. Certain rehabilitation programs for stroke patients or individuals with auditory processing disorders use sound stimulation to promote cortical reorganization. This continuous, rich quality of analog sound provides more nuanced cues than digital approximations, which can enhance the brain's ability to adapt and restore function. Even in more basic cognitive functions, the timing and texture of analog sound impact how the brain synchronizes activity. The rhythm and flow of natural speech or music can entrain neural oscillations, patterns of the brain patterns of the brainwave activity that support attention, memory, and emotional regulation. These entertainment patterns, no, entrainment, these entrainment patterns are another example of how the physical properties of analog sound can drive changes in brain function through neuroplasticity. The relationship between analog sound waves, neuroplasticity, and artificial intelligence emerges most clearly in the way AI systems are designed to interpret and learn from audio data, especially through techniques inspired by how the human brain processes sound. While AI does not physically replicate neuroplasticity or directly perceive analog waves, it draws heavily from the biological principles behind how the brain reacts to, adapts to, and learns from continuous auditory input. Analog sound waves must first be converted into digital signals for artificial intelligence systems to process. This process, called analog to digital conversion, captures characteristics such as frequency, amplitude, and timing, and samples them into numerical values. These digital representations become the input data for AI models designed for tasks like speech recognition, voice synthesis, emotion detection, or music analysis. The process mimics how the human ear and auditory nerve convert analog pressure waves into neural impulses from the brain to interpret. In biological systems, neuroplasticity allows the brain to adapt to variations of sound, learn languages, and understand tone, and improve comprehension over time. AI aims to emulate this adaptive capability through learning algorithms, especially in deep learning models trained on vast datasets of human speech or environmental sounds. For instance, an AI model might be trained on thousands of speech recordings in different accents, dialects, and emotional states, learning to distinguish between them in much the same way the brain adapts to auditory diversity. One clear connection lies in the development of machine learning models for speech recognition and audio classification. These models use layers of artificial neurons that adjust their weights based on experience in a manner conceptually similar to how the brain reinforces or weakens synaptic connections. Over time, the model becomes better at mapping audio features to language, much as a child learns to understand and speak by repeatedly hearing words and phrases in various contexts. AI also seeks to mimic the brain's stability to handle complex audio environments, such as distinguishing a single voice in a noisy room or detecting emotion from subtle vocal cues. These functions rely on analyzing the structure of dynamic patterns of audio elements that originate in analog form and are shaped by the brain's plasticity during early exposure. AI replicates this sensitivity using techniques like spectrogram analysis, feature extraction, and temporal modeling. Recurrent And attention-based networks, for example, are designed to capture dependencies across time, which mirrors how the brain uses past auditory information to inform current interpretation. Emotion recognition in voice. Another area of overlap is informed by how neuroplasticity enables humans to detect subtle shifts in tone or cadence. AI models are trained to recognize these shifts as well, often using large datasets where vocal emotion is labeled. Through training, the AI adapts its internal parameters, approximating a form of functional plasticity that allows it to refine and personalize its understanding based on the emotional content of the speaker. Even more self-supervised learning models are being developed to simulate human-like learning from audio without explicit labels, similar to how the brain learns language naturally from ambient speech. These AI systems listen to unstructured data and gradually form internal representations of phonemes, intonations, and patterns without needing explicit instructions, drawing closer to the unsupervised learning nature of the brain. Now, with that, I am going to end it here, and I will come back and do another episode. I thought I would be able to get through this with all the stuff that I had, but it looks like I am actually at the spot where I do need to come back and start it up again from this point. And we're already at an hour and 7 minutes, so I will come back with part 6 of this uh, part right here, which is concerns the human brain and pla- neuroplasticity, things of that nature. Like I said, I was having a hard time getting this information out and being able to do it, but I was able to pull some content, get it all organized and ready to go so that I could have it ready. I didn't realize that I actually did a good job of it, so um, I didn't think I didn't think I had more than an hour to of content to put out there, but I guess I did, which is good. So with that, like I said, I'm going to end it here. And next time when I come on, I'm going to get into the more philosophical, um, religious, or spiritual, whatever part of the cosmic weave that comes next after this, because I usually switch between them. And yeah, I'll come back with that. And then after that, I'll come back to this and I'll start talking about waveform shapes and how they relate to neuroplasticity. And we'll go from there. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give feedback. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I am going to wish everybody a good day and in this stream. Hope you guys enjoyed. Actually, let me go through and check and make sure if anybody's actually made any comments before I get off here. Yeah. So, no, doesn't look like we've had any comments whatsoever. Just to let everybody know, I am streaming on Rumble, X, VLive, Twitch, Kick, and YouTube. So if you want to check me out on any of those platforms, that's where I will be on. Um, I am also on Teams as well as Discord. Uh, you, we have an actual channel for the Wonderful World of Weirdness on Rumble and YouTube, but on the other channels, it's just my channel, which is Roger Hanson or Roger underscore Hanson. So keep that in mind. I have playlists set up on YouTube as well as on Rumble that you guys can go and check out if you wish to. Um, and with that being said, I will go ahead and end the show and talk to you guys later.